Osceola County, and I think she's like a natural resource agent. So it's going to be a little bit different perspective a lot of the time than what we see with just traditional horticulture agents. So, and she's going to talk to you guys about backyard journaling, nature in your, everything involving nature in your own backyard here. And I'll go ahead and toss it off to her here right now.
Of course. Thank you. All right. I hope everyone can hear me and see the screen okay. I'm happy to be here. I hope you guys are all doing well. I am, as John said, I am Krista. I'm the Natural Resources Extension Agent in Osceola County. So a lot of my program areas, I do classes in water conservation and water quality. I do classes on wildlife or invasive species, as well as some native plants. But today, I'm going to share with you some information about backyard nature journaling. And this is a new program that I've kicked off since the start of this whole situation where we find ourselves, a lot of us, at home a lot more than normal. And it's something that we can do to get outside and connect with nature while improving our scientific observation skills, which as master gardeners is so important for you guys as well to help with plant ID. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this is a long quote here, but this is by a man named John Moore, and he created a book about backyard nature journaling. But the quote I wanted to share with you is that he says there's 3 reasons why he does it. It's to see, to remember, and to stimulate curiosity. Because the purpose of a journal, especially a nature journal, is not just simply to write down scientific observations. There's a bit of an art form to it, and that's what I want to share with you guys. It's not limited to what you produce on the page. It is rather found in your experience and how you think along the way. So it's helping us shape the way we think and to put down our own experience. Along the way, if you guys have any questions, we'll address them at the end, but you can also type them in the chat box and we'll go through them that way as well. So we're going to talk about what is a nature journal. Some of you may be already familiar, but we'll go over that. We'll talk about the benefits of nature journaling, how to keep one, and then finally, how you can participate in the project that I'm working on. It's really cool and it's a great citizen science initiative. So the Smithsonian has one of the largest collections of nature journals. It's pretty cool, but they say that there's really 3 major types of nature journals, so not all of them are the same. There are journals that are used and can now be used as tools of the trade. So for instance, with you guys, it could be for gardening, but there's also farming or wildlife management journals that now we can use to help us with whether it's a job or a passion. There are also journals that are used as scientific record. And this is one we're most familiar with when we think back in history. For instance, think of Darwin and his work with his finches or any other scientific explorer. They often kept a journal. However, journals can also be used as a personal record. So even though the subject is nature, it helps us keep a person's history by seeing the way they progress with their nature journal. And here are just a couple examples of what I mean by that typical historic nature journal that we might think of. And these are in the Smithsonian collection. And one was focusing on moons, and so observations up into the universe, and another one on birds. But for both of these collections, they did not have just one focal point. They would keep journals about all of their observations, and that became more of a personal history. So we know a lot more about these scientists and adventurers because they kept a journal that way on everything. Now in modern times, we still see nature journals a lot, but one of the biggest and coolest things we have to our advantage is technology and social media. And this is a picture of a woman named Lara. She has a nature journaling Instagram, and she shares it to over 78,000 people. And as you can see, her journal is absolutely gorgeous, but she makes great observations and is an environmentalist by trade. So even though if you're not Lara and have amazing artistic skills, that doesn't matter because there are so many other benefits and purposes of keeping these journals. And as an example, you know, students as young as kindergarten can start keeping nature journals. So you don't have to be artistically inclined. And in fact, you don't have to keep a sketch at all. Like I said, these days we have all that technology, and that includes apps. I hope some of you are familiar with the iNaturalist app, and that helps you ID plants or wildlife, whatever you're trying to identify. And so you can almost create that into a type of a nature journal because it combines all your observations. And then you can add maybe keep a Word document or a notebook with extra observations that you tie to your pictures and your identification. But there's plenty of other apps out there, you know. It just depends on personal preference, if you even love to use technology or not. Personally, I'm the type of person that I love paper. I write all my lists and stuff down with pen and paper. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with just keeping a sketchbook that way. So why do we even bother keeping a nature journal? Why am I here today? That is because this is a really important tool that we can use to help hone our observational skills. Think back when we were in, you know, elementary school, middle school, even through high school. But that's way back then, we were learning the scientific process. And if we don't work at it, it's something that we can lose because it is a skill. Helps us connect to nature as well. And that's so important during these times. Nature provides us a lot of mental, physical, emotional health benefits. And this gives us a reason to go outside, something to focus on for even if it's just, you know, 20, 30 minutes. It helps us develop a sense of place. So a sense of place means that we find a connection with where we are, our community, our environment. And by actually going out and sitting down and being still and taking the time to keep a journal, we develop a stronger sense of place. This makes us better citizens. It makes us more involved. We start to feel like we have some ownership over where we live and we want to protect it. And I already mentioned that because we're in nature, there are many mental and physical health benefits. So even if you aren't up for taking a walk around your neighborhood, simply going outside and sitting and doing nature observations has been proven to increase your health. And just like those scientists that were able to look back and understand their life and their life history better because of their nature journals, you too, if you keep a nature journal, is a great way to reflect both as you're creating the journal. It may bring up some memories of the past, but also for the future. Whether it's yourself or your loved ones can look through your journal, and it's a great way to reflect, and it's a personal keepsake. Okay, but let's talk about the process. How do we actually do this? Well, it's actually really flexible because a nature journal is such a broad description. So it's really up to you. But what I recommend is you need to first start by selecting a location or a subject. At that time, you want to record vital information because yes, while this can be artistic and it is whatever you want, you need to be able to tie it to the date, the time, the exact location, the weather, or any other important information like that. And why is that? Well, it's because as we know with nature, things can change seasonally, right? They can change based on the time of the day or the weather. You know, is it raining or not? And exactly where you are location wise is important too, right? So that's why we want to tie all of that to our journal. The next step is after you've selected a subject or the location, you've recorded this important information. Now it's time to make the observations and record them. And often you don't just want those written words, you want to tie something graphically to it. That's why you see a lot of sketchbooks, or as I recommended, some of those apps where you could take a picture with your phone. You can also do paintings or etchings, or even if it doesn't hurt the specimen, whatever you're looking at, you can also take a sample and make a pressing in your book to keep. So let's start, we're gonna go through that process with more specifics. When we're picking a location, there are plenty of other options you can choose as well. For instance, if you're keeping one whole journal and you want to turn this into a daily practice, you could just select one location and then every entry is at that location and you're making observations with what you're seeing. or you could change it up. You could also do a sit spot, meaning that you could change up where you're sitting, but you sit there and then record what you're seeing. You could go for a walk. So you're not tied to just one spot, especially because this is a personal nature journal. So do what is best for you. So you could walk around your neighborhood and make observations that way. You could change up different zones, break up your yard, or if you're able to go to your neighborhood, into different zones, and then do one entry per zone regularly. This allows you to cover more area, but also stay fine-tuned enough so that you can pick up on smaller observations that you might otherwise miss if we were doing our entire backyard, for instance, if we have a larger yard. If we break it up into smaller zones, then we can see more and see more detail. A lot of times people are like, well, I either live in an apartment or I'm not able to go outside, or I don't have a large yard. The thing is with nature is we think a lot about plants, especially us, you guys as master gardeners, or I think about wildlife or even habitat. But if we look up, that too can be something we record and keep in our journal. So you can do a sky watch. So you can look up and record the cloud types. You know, is it clear? What is, you know, for instance, this picture is a rainbow, but also the weather is important. So regardless of where you are, there is an opportunity to do this. Now, if you're selecting a subject, you could keep that same subject and do multiple entries on it, but whatever you do, let your curiosity guide you as you're out there. What are you drawn to? But you need to consider the scope. The easiest way to think of this is the tree versus the leaf. So a tree would be a very large scope and you would need to do a lot of observations, but it's a great place to start, and you can narrow that down and then also look at the leaf itself and be able to do a sketch or a picture and add lots of details about the leaf. So with that, you could include just one or a sum of parts. For instance, with the tree analogy, continuing on, not just leaves, but what about twigs, seeds, berries? You can look at what insects are seen on the tree. What birds do you see in that tree? And so then you're starting to create a system, and you can, with multiple observations, and think out of the box. Like I said, not just wildlife and plants, but do the sky watch, like I mentioned. But you can also look at soil, look at your houseplants if you're indoors, rocks, bodies of water. It's not just all plants and wildlife. After you've selected, you're at your location, you have your subject, what are potential observations? This is where we're getting back to our roots of the scientific method and creating observations, because an observation is anything that you sense. So you don't want to just be using your eyes with this and recording what you're seeing and just doing the sketch, but think about the sounds. What are you hearing? That's why it's great to be sitting there and it's nice and silent. But what do you hear? What do you smell? Now, of course, you want to be cautious with our other senses. Don't just go eating everything. In fact, I would not recommend tasting at all unless you're very confident that it's an edible, maybe it's an edible garden or something. And same with touching, unless you're absolutely positive. But you want to view whatever you're looking at as if you're a kid again. Because over time, if we know what a live oak looks like, right? And so we look at a tree and we're like, that's a live oak. Bring it back. Think about before you knew anything about plants, before you really understood the world at all, and make observations as if you were like an alien coming down and you had to literally be like, this apple is round, right? You're not just like, it is an apple. Be more creative. Think about it as if you don't have any preconceived ideas about what it is or any knowledge about it. Do that at first. And then after you record those basic observations, that's when you start to tie in your knowledge. What do you know about this? What do you believe it is? Try and take a guess at IDing it. Along the way, you want to know any colors, shapes. Is there any movement? This is important because even if it is a tree, it's not a static object, right? So are the leaves blowing? How is it moving? And of course, if it's wildlife, movement is very important. So don't forget that, as well as behavior if it's wildlife. You can also do measurements, but the measurements don't have to be exact. You don't have to whip out a ruler or something. Instead, something great you can do is compare it to a household object that's well known. So is it the size of a loaf of bread, for instance? Is it the size of a grape? That allows you to record the measurement without needing an exact measurement. And then you can always go back if you do want an approximate. You can measure a loaf of bread or you can measure a grape, and that helps you have a more quantitative measurement. But a lot of those things that I just talked about, those are scientific observations. However, we know that science, a huge portion of science is the artistic side of it. And likewise with art and science, they're very intermixed, and it's important with nature journals. This is one of the reasons why I love this topic so much, is because it's marrying the two. It is an art form and it is a skill, but it's also a scientific record. So don't be afraid to be more artistic with it. For instance, as you're recording, if you have a thought pop up in your mind, like for instance, a memory, like we talked about previously, or maybe it reminds you of something, some form of art, such as a song or a poem or even a movie or a book that you're reading, and you want to tie that into it, record that. It's important because this is not, if we think about the health benefits, our mental and emotional health is really important. And this has been proven to improve your mood, and reflection and embracing the artistic side of it is an important part of that. You can also use metaphors and similes, and the example I gave about measurement is a perfect one. And this one is the beak length is the size of a crunchy Cheeto. So it doesn't have to, I use that because it doesn't have to be serious. This is whatever you want it to be, whatever just pops into your head. It's important to make those observations and don't judge it, but write it down. And just with the crunchy Cheeto, it doesn't have to be serious. It can be whatever you want it to be. If you feel so inspired or you just want to give it a whirl, you can try and write a short poem about what you're seeing. This helps us bridge that gap in our minds, because as we're writing the observations and then we turn to something artistic, that's how we really can bridge the gap between the art and the science. In addition, how does it make you feel? And record it. It's important to write it down and not just think about it. And something that I will talk a little bit more about is record your mood before and after the session. If you ever reflect by going back through your journal, it'll be awesome to have and to see just how much this little simple exercise can improve your mood, and it can encourage you to continue doing it. And I loved this example I saw. It was a simple child's nature journal, but their observation they chose to put down was, I wish people did not count dandelions as weeds. And that's completely valid. And it's so important. You'll note at the top, they noted the date as well as the location and the weather. But don't discount something that you're feeling or just a simple thought that passes into your brain. Don't discount it as a valid observation. Okay, with all that said, I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to just practice this, humor me, and try and be really creative. We're going to continue. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do this, and then we'll continue. And then at the end, after questions, if we still have some time, I'll ask somebody to share. But so take a second, look around you. I know almost all of you are inside, but that's great. So find a common object near you, whether it's on your desk or in your living room. Select a subject. You know, it could even be your coffee cup or your water glass. Practice noting the date, the time, the weather, and the location. You can either jot it down or just think through these things in your head, and then make 5 observations. And I'm going to challenge you to try and make at least 1 or 2 of them something that's more artistic. And remember, look at it as if you don't know what it is at first. Okay, so I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. All right, so even if you haven't made all 5 of your observations, if you jotted down what your subject is, you can complete that later. But I hope it was just a good exercise of showing you how to get back to basics, and also that even if you are stuck to your backyard or even inside or just looking out a window or up at the sky, there's a lot that you can observe and do, even if it's a simple something you've seen for years. It still is a valid subject and there are observations to be made. So I briefly mentioned apps, but I want to make another note about technology. You don't need to use any apps. Like I said, you can just jot things down, but there are resources out there. So there are identification apps. I mentioned iNaturalist. That is my personal favorite, but if you have one that you prefer, or if you find that you like another one, feel free to use that. That is great because with identification, I would recommend to try and practice your identification skills first through this nature journaling process, and leave that step as last, so that you're actually stretching yourself and trying to identify what it is, or you're making observations without knowing what it is. So you are having that childlike wonder. There are a lot of journaling or note-keeping apps out there. And so if you are wanting to take pictures and you don't want to sketch, then you can just jot down your observations in a note with the picture. And that's a very easy way. Once you have a journal, if you really want to go the extra mile, you can be like the example we showed earlier and publish it to social media. Of course, you don't have to, because these are just for you, but that's another way of making it more social and you're connecting with others. You can also do this by starting a blog or something like that. But one of the most basic ways, if you do want to take pictures, is to just keep a Word document, a running Word document, or whatever word processing software you use. And then it could be very basic with a picture and then the observations. But then it's saved and you have a record of it. And pen and paper works just fine. The great thing about pen and paper is that it goes with you. It travels with you, right? So yes, our phones can as well, but maybe you don't always have service, or maybe you want to spend your nature journaling time as time away from any technology, which I love to do. And so that's where pen and paper can be great. And you can take sketches with it, but if you prefer, take a picture and keep a journal with all the observations on the side, right? It can be whatever works the best for you. All right, so finally, I'm going to finish out this before we go into Q&A to talk about a project that I'm working on. So I am going around and introducing people to this concept of nature journaling, or at least expanding what they know about it, and to encourage them to try and turn it into a weekly practice. And with that, if you guys are interested and you maybe just want to give it a shot, I would really encourage you to try and do an entry. Take some time. Like I said, it can be pretty quick, 10, 20 minutes, but longer also. And write down all of the observations that we just went through, and then try and identify it. And something very important to do is to rate your mood before and after on a 1 to 5 scale. Because then what you can do is, after you record it, I'm tracking this data, and it's completely anonymous, so it's not tied to you at all, and you don't have to share your journal at all. I'm just simply tracking to see how many people are participating in this, what are they observing, and most importantly, how is this improving their quality of life, especially during this difficult time. So I will be providing this survey link to John, and hopefully he can send it out to all you guys. If you've taken any Qualtrics surveys before, it's very easy, and this is about 5 questions. It isn't very long at all, and there isn't a lot of typing. Like I said, the biggest data that we're trying to get out of this is how is it improving your quality of life. After this, if you have any questions about it, there's my email. It's stumpk@ufl.edu, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or follow up if you have any problems with the survey. But here is a simple sketch that I did the other day, and it took me about 10-15 minutes to do, and the survey takes about 1 minute, if that, to complete. And with that information, you're allowing me to be able to expand this program. And in fact, I don't know if any of you, I know a lot of you are familiar with the Master Naturalist program. So you guys are Master Gardeners, but there's the Florida Master Naturalist program. And as a natural resources agent, that's something that I do. And there are discussions about creating a nature journaling Master Naturalist course. And that would be an in-depth course that allows you to practice this and enhance your scientific observation skills through this. And this data that we're getting through this helps us develop that course, and it helps us develop more programming. So if you do decide to participate, you don't have to just stop with making a journal. You can turn into a social activity. You can do that by, if you guys have a Master Gardener Facebook group, or if you guys have some of your Master Gardener friends on Facebook, share with each other what you've observed, share your pictures, talk about it. You can, whether it's these Zoom meetings or separate Zoom meetings, maybe your monthly meetings, you can share what you've done, what you've seen. Turn it into a family activity where you guys all do your own journals, and then that's something that you can talk about. And then you can also, call up a friend and talk to them about this. The reason why this component is so important is because a lot of our lives have been kind of flipped on its head recently, and a lot of our conversation is about one subject, and that is the pandemic that's occurring. But this gives us something to talk about, something to focus on, something positive and uplifting to share with our friends and our family. You can also, even though we talked about the different apps and that you can also use a sketchbook, you don't have to just stick to one. In fact, I'd urge you to try a couple, because that is the only way you'll know what you actually prefer and what's easiest. So try a sketchbook, even if you're not an artist, just try it. And with that, reach outside your comfort zone and try something new. If you hate technology, maybe just try using it once, and then you can say you tried it and you didn't like it. If you're not very artistically inclined, grab a piece of paper and just try and sketch something. The great thing about sketches versus pictures is that you have to slow down and you start to observe shapes and colors and movement a lot better, because you have to in order to try and make a drawing. So it's almost the process of doing that is way more important than what your sketch ends up looking like, right? So just try it out. Similarly, if you want to improve your identification skills, do your nature journal and then try and use books or online resources and attempt to identify it yourself. A lot of times, especially if we have a lot of Master Gardener friends, or maybe Native Plant Society friends, or whatever it may be, or you have an extension agent at your disposal, it's easy to just ask if we don't know what something is. But the process of trying to figure it out ourselves is also a skill that we want to practice. And if you want more of a challenge, instead of just doing whatever you feel like and letting your curiosity guide you, you could pick a theme. So try and do invasive plants and focus on that, or focus on Florida natives or pollinators. And then your journal will have a consistent theme throughout. So I've included in this presentation some of the resources and additional reading that I mentioned, including a resource about field journals and sketching, as well as the Smithsonian had a great guide on keeping a nature journal. And that's where I pulled some of those earlier scientific journals from. But I will also send this out so you guys can have these as a resource if you want to learn more. So with that, I want to say thank you. I hoped, even if you are a nature journal expert, that this inspired you to pick it back up, try it out. And if you do, I urge you to please participate in our project. You'll be contributing to a really cool program that could come out of this. And please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about the process or the survey. And at this time, I'll take any questions you guys have. All right. If you guys have, you can unmute yourself if you have any questions, or you can type them in the chat.
So how about going out to other places? Do you have any recommendations, like for areas that might be accessible right now, besides like your own backyard for doing this type of stuff?
I'm more familiar with Osceola County. And since the summer hit, I haven't been out that much to know how busy things are. So what I will add is if you have a local park or a regional park or something that you would like to go to, still be very, very careful with the CDC guidelines, and you want to stay distant. And the thing with that is you just want to be aware that you need to bring everything that you need, and you won't have any facilities available. Someone asked, could you put the screen with the web addresses again? Yes, of course. There you go. But yeah, so do your due diligence. And also, if you do have a place and you're not sure if it's open or what it's like, you can also email me if it's in Orange County. I live in Orange County, so I am somewhat familiar, but most of my lessons are about Osceola County, and there are some great parks down here as well. Most county parks are open and following guidelines. Someone went to, Janice went to Moss Park recently. Yes, so that's great. And they also keep it online what is open, but most county parks are open. I know state parks were closed for a while. Just be careful with peak times. So try and go when it's not going to be as busy, and also be cognizant of things like holidays where there'll be a lot more people, and keep your distance. If you're able to, for health reasons, please wear a mask, and just stay safe if you do decide to leave your backyard. That is where also, if you live in a walkable area, you can also go for a walk around your neighborhood to find other things. And don't be afraid to make observations respectfully of people's like trees or yards, right? So you don't have to be confined to just your own backyard. Any other questions? How many other county extension centers do this type of thing? As far as I know, I'm the first one to really be going around talking about nature journaling. That's why I was contacted about the Master Naturalist program and creating a course about it. I am also working with the Master Naturalist coordinator on creating an EDIS document, which all of you should be familiar with EDIS. That's where we keep all of our publications. And so even though that is a long process of writing it and getting it reviewed, once it's available, I can also make that available to you guys. Any last questions? I appreciate your guys' comments about how valuable it is and valuable for children. I completely agree. And with that, you know, share with somebody. If you have a teacher friend too, share this with them. It's a great activity for youth. Any final questions? Orlando Wetlands is a great place to observe birds. Yes, it is. Yeah, thank you for that.
All right. Well, I guess if there's no further questions, I'll make sure to get all of your information here, and Krista, and pass it on to everybody in an email after this.
That was
But yeah, thank you for being here and offering something to do. Like, it's a little bit different. This is a little bit more hands-on than what we're used to these days. But I think it's something good to be, to stay engaged, and you know just go out and observe. Trying to we're very active a lot of times, like with gardening. But this is something that it's still active in a sense, but it kind of changes the emphasis a little bit to just listen instead. So
That's exactly right. And we all need some time to sit with ourselves and focus on something else, right? So thanks for inviting me, John, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to email me, and we'll get you guys the resources that I mentioned.
Cool. Thank you, Krista. I guess with that, I guess we'll just go into the all members meeting here, and I'll go ahead and give you guys some updates. And if you've got anything to comment on, hold it for the end of the meeting here, or after I have a few little comments here, and we'll go over them at that point. I guess the biggest thing that I want to talk to you guys about is like just our normal operations right now, and that the plant clinic is still functional now from 8 to noon, and is being staffed like with one master gardener like at a time with me here. And so far it's going pretty well. But something else that we've been in the, it's been in the skunk works here, something that we've been working on in the background is having a remote plant clinic. And other counties have been doing this for a while, and I was kind of taking cues quite a bit from Katie McCormick up in Seminole County on how to do this successfully. And basically, you need a few things for it to operate. You need an email. You need some way to communicate like verbally with the clients, and then we need a way to like relay information to each other. And so I've been investigating on how to do that the best way with a few of the master gardeners, and I think that we're gonna keep testing it here, but then eventually I think there'll probably be some more room down the road here for people that want to participate in working in the remote plant clinic. Currently, it's just in the afternoon.
What happened here?
But we may.
Sound is lower.
No, it's on his end.
John, we can't hear you.
Oh, good.
John, we've lost you.
Can't hear me? Can you guys hear me, see me?
Now we can.
You're
How
all
long
set,
ago did I cut out?
like about the last minute and a half of your conversation.
Minute and a half?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. I guess they're working on the network a little bit here. I think I kind of mentioned to some of you guys that we're transitioning from different networks currently on the county's network,
My news.
but we're shifting over to University Florida's network. So that there might be some IT stuff going on right now that's interfering. I've seen them around, but I guess I think I don't know how much I've already covered here or how much you guys missed, but we basically we're starting to have the remote plant clinic, and we're investigating different ways of having it conducted. It's only in the afternoon right now, and there's one person assigned per afternoon, but for down the road, I think that we might see about expanding it. And so just keep that in mind, and if you're interested in participating in that, let me know, and I'll keep a list of everybody that might want to be part of the remote plant clinic. So with that, are there any other comments, questions, etc.? Well,
How's the new guy doing?
What's that?
How's the new admin doing?
We had, so good point. We have a new director, center director here for the county, and his name's Kevin Cam. I think I mentioned last week, and he's pretty inundated with stuff right now, but I think next week I'm going to see about introducing him to you guys. I'll probably try and go in the conference room with him and have him sit down at the table and talk to you guys and just give an intro. Let him in his own words tell him about himself, and he's been involved with master gardeners before, so I'm sure that he'd be curious to meet you guys and get your feedback and what just as best we can introduce each other to one another here. So But outside that, I think one of the other things I wanted to mention too was I think I'm gonna start easing up a little bit on the lunch and learns. We've been doing these weekly. I think that beginning in September here, I think I'm going to see about moving them to twice a week instead, because I'm having to switch gears into having a new class online and getting all that sorted and everything else, like trying to go through interviews, etc., and then starting that whole process and probably initiating classes like beginning in November. So just something to be aware of. I would like to have a couple of like advanced master gardener classes between September to the beginning of those trainee classes as well. Just something to, keep you guys thinking about like what we do here and stuff that will be relevant to operations mostly. Twice a month. So we'll be doing that. So yeah, every other week is what we would be doing. So anyway, if there's anything else, I don't know, I guess we can see about doing, unless anybody has anything else to say, we'll just go into breakout rooms and we can try that again here. I've got some time.
John, do you know when Tia is going to start with volunteers in the garden?
I haven't heard a whole lot there. I would just say keep contacting Tia. Tia has a list of everybody that's interested in volunteering with the garden. And I mean, that's a little outside of the operations that like I'm in charge of here. That's literally Tia's turf. So okay.
John, do you have any more information on how this remote plant clinic would operate?
I think I kind of covered that in that time that I was speaking and you guys couldn't hear me.
Could you repeat it, please?
Hmm?
Could you repeat what you said?
Yeah, I mean, it's not super important, but the big thing that we've been trying out is that you need a few things for it to be functional. You need a way to communicate verbally with them. So I've been having people set up Google voice accounts so that they don't have to use their own personal phone number, and they know if somebody that they're talking to, that's trying to contact them, is probably one of the clients from the county. And so we've been setting that up. We've been also, it's been important to communicate information to one another and to like see who, like how many people that we have to take care of, how to keep track of those numbers, etc. Since we don't have those physical sheets, we're using something called Google Sheets, which is just basically an Excel spreadsheet that is able to be shared. Multiple people can log on it, and you can see other people editing it at the same time. And so we've got that going. And then the other part of it is having an email for people if they need to send you photos, which is pretty helpful a lot of the time. So we've got a new Orange County Master Gardener IFAS email account as well that everyone that is going to be part of it will have access to.
In September, will it be like the first and the third week, or for the lunch and learns?
I haven't decided
or
yet.
The second and the fourth, or whatever.
That's kind of what I'm thinking is second and fourth week, but we'll see. I'll keep you all posted.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, if there isn't anything else.
Is there anything more on the over 65 situation? I noticed Sandy made a comment. So those of us who are over 65 are still banned from the plant clinic.
that's some very strong language you're using there, Penny.
Well,
I don't
that,
understand.
it is what it is. All a spade is spade.
I think that it's more of, you know, we're following CDC guidelines, and I know that the guidelines have changed a little bit here, but generally age is a very strong indicator of other things that are correlated with causing COVID to having a bad response for a lot of folks. So
The,
we're still following those. Whereas,
the
you know,
average age of people contracting the disease is now lower.
that doesn't mean that it's any less deadly for people that are older, though. So, and that their exposure to it should be minimal.
Sandy, we're fighting a losing battle.
I know. So, but
Consider it a vacation.
Yeah, yeah.
a very long vacation.
I know.
So yeah, I guess just stay tuned. I'll try and, you know, I'm trying to open up other avenues here. Like, you know, one of the things I think that like we might be kind of open with the citizens science project to, you know, opening those age requirements for that too. So it's outside of everything, and you can probably safely distance from people like on your own street. So but I'll keep you all posted on that. But yeah, I guess I haven't been told anything different, and if you want me to bring Ed back on and to have everything reiterated, but not as nicely, like I could do that too. So
We get the idea. We get it. We get it.
all right. Well,
Get it.
with all that, I'm gonna try. If you know, if you don't want to participate, like in the breakout sessions, I guess this is probably the end of the meeting. So it was a little bit shorter today. I guess half an hour for continuing education, 15 minutes for volunteer service, and then I guess this is just almost counts as like being outside of it. I don't really know if this is volunteer service or not, but
Yeah, this is part of the meeting.
the meeting, like if we
Sure.
do breakout meetings, okay. Well,
Oh, yeah.
okay, if you stay on for the breakout meeting, like add another 15 minutes to it. So
It's a breakout meeting.
you're about to find out.
Oh.
All right, I'm turning them on here. All right, you guys are gonna be broken up into separate rooms here. So if I don't see you, take care, and I'll see you next week.
I don't know what a breakout meeting is. Join breakout room. I'll join. Should I do a
Yeah,
breakout
everybody
meeting?
just join their respective rooms, and then you can talk to each other in there.
How do you know if a room is full?
They won't fill up. Just join one, and then I think that you might have the ability to move between rooms too.